Imagine that right now there's an invisible puppeteer in your head. He whispers to you, "You are not worthy. You will not succeed. You look stupid." And the worst thing is that you do not even notice how he pulls the strings. Carl Jung called this puppeteer the shadow, the dark part of the psyche that hides in the subconscious. 90% of people live without suspecting that their decisions, fears, and even successes are not their voice, but manipulations of the shadow. But today you will learn how to bring it to light and stop being a puppet. Have you ever wondered why smart people do stupid things? Here's a true story. A successful businessman, let's call him Alex, always made balanced decisions. But when it was time to sign a contract for $1 million, he was suddenly overcome by wild fear. What if I fail? Was spinning in his head. He walked away from the deal, and a month later, the competitor who took the risk bought a villa in Spain. This is not logic. This is a shadow. It is afraid of your success because its task is to keep you in the comfort zone, even if the zone is like a prison. Jung compared the shadow to the basement of a house. We live on the upper floors, in the bright rooms of consciousness, but it is in the basement that forgotten childhood traumas, repressed desires, and forbidden thoughts lie. And when you say, "I will never be like my father," the shadow whispers, "Look, you are already repeating his habits." Here's an example. A girl, let's call her Anya, hated how her mother criticized her appearance. But when Anya became a mother herself, she caught herself saying the same phrases. "The skirt makes you look fat." The shadow does not disappear. It changes clothes and continues a performance. How does the shadow disguise itself? Through projections. You hate in others what you do not recognize in yourself. The office tyrant who screams about laziness dreams of lying on the couch. The wife who accuses her husband of coldness is afraid of her own undisclosed feelings. My client Sergey was furious when colleagues were late, until one day he confessed. As a child, he was beaten for being late to school. His shadow turned old pain into anger at innocent people. But there's good news. The shadow is not an enemy, but a locked treasure chest. Your charisma, creativity, and even sexuality, which you once forbade yourself, are hidden in it. Remember how in childhood you were called an upstart for bold ideas, and you learned to keep quiet, or shamed for loud laughter, and you shrank into a ball of seriousness. The shadow stole these gifts, but now you can get them back. Practical task. Conduct an experiment tomorrow morning. When you feel sharp, I don't want to call a client. Go to the gym. Confess your feelings. Ask yourself, am I afraid or is my shadow sabotaging me? Write down the first answer that comes to mind. Often it will be a child's voice. You won't be able to do it like last time. There it is, your shadow in its purest form. Jung said, "It is better to have integrity than a good reputation." Integrity is when you recognize that there is both light and darkness in you, that you can be kind and cruel, generous and greedy. And when you stop hiding these parts, they will stop controlling you from underground. As one of my clients said after a year of therapy, "I used to think I was driving a car. It turned out I was the car. Now I'm finally behind the wheel." Your shadow will not disappear. But from today on, you have a choice. Continue to be your puppet or become the one pulling the strings. Remember, every time you say, "I'm just like this," somewhere in the basement of your psyche, the shadow rubs its hands. It loves it when you believe that you can't change. But today you learn the truth. Now it's up to you. You probably notice how some people go around in circles for years. The same problems, the same mistakes. They sincerely believe that circumstances just worked out that way. But in reality, it's a shadow that's leading them along the beaten track. Here's another example from life. Imagine a man, let's call him Dmitri. He started a business 3 times, and each time everything collapsed at the growth stage. It would seem like bad luck. But when we looked into his story, it turned out that every time the business started bringing in serious money, Dmitri accidentally made a fatal mistake. He lost an important contract, missed deadlines, even ended up in a hospital on the eve of the deal. His shadow was programmed in childhood. His father constantly repeated, "Big money spoils people." And subconsciously, Dmitri sabotaged success in order to stay good. And now the most interesting part. The shadow does not always destroy. Sometimes it helps you suffer. Do you know the feeling when after an argument you replay the dialogue in your head over and over, adding new caustic phrases? This is the shadow feeding on your pain. Or another example. You dream of a new relationship, but subconsciously choose partners who are emotionally unavailable. In this way, the shadow reproduces an old wound, for example, the experience of an abandoned child. But how to break free from this captivity? The first step is to recognize the language of the shadow. It whispers, "I'm just a realist. In reality, the fear of dreaming. I have no choice. Denial of responsibility. This is life. Surrender to circumstances." Try to catch at least one such phrase today. Replace it with the question, what is hidden behind this belief? Here is another story for you. A woman, let's call her Olga, complained, "Why do I always fall in love with men who do not appreciate me?" It turned out that at 15 she confessed her feelings for the first time and was ridiculed. The shadow remembered, love equals pain. And now Olga unconsciously chose partners who confirmed this belief. Jung called it a complex, a cloud of suppressed emotions that acts as an autonomous program. But there's a way to defuse it. Every time you notice a repeating scenario, ask yourself, first, when did I first feel this? Most often, before the age of 12. Second, who does this fear really belong to? Often parents or teachers. Third, what would I do if I were not afraid? Try it right now. Remember a situation where you felt not good enough. Now imagine that you return there as an adult. What would you say to that little you? This is the beginning of working with the shadow. Not a fight, but a dialogue. When client Katia realized that her laziness was actually a protest against her mother's hypercontrol, she suddenly discovered an incredible reserve of energy. It turned out that it was not she who was lacking initiative, but her shadow who had been sabotaging any initiative for years so as not to repeat her mother's driven horse scenario. But the most powerful weapon against the shadow is humor. When you start laughing at your cockroaches, they lose power. One of my friends, who was terrified of public speaking, imagined his shadow as a wet kitten hissing from under a chair. And every time fear rolled in, he would mentally say, "Oh, Cupcake is so nervous." And lo and behold, the anxiety would recede. Your shadow is afraid of three things. First, awareness when you call it manipulation. Second, acceptance when you admit, yes, this is a part of me. Third, creativity when you transform its dark energy into art, business, or helping others. Try to perform a ritual tonight. Take a piece of paper, divide it into 2 columns. In the first, write, what I hate about myself. In the second, how can this quality serve me? For example, I am stubborn. I know how to stand my ground. I am anxious. I notice dangers before others. This is the alchemy of the shadow. Turning the lead of fears into the gold of power. Jung said, the shadow is what you do not want to be. But the paradox is that until you accept this part, it will control you. The choice is yours. Continue to be a puppet or finally become the master of your psyche. And remember, your shadow is not a monster under the bed. It is just a frightened child who finally wants to be heard. So, who is pulling the strings in your life? Deep mechanisms of the shadow, how it forms and how to unravel it. Have you ever wondered why some people go around in circles for years, stepping on the same rake? They change partner, jobs, cities, but in the end they find themselves in a similar situation again. It's not fate. It's their shadow that leads them along a familiar route, like a blind man along a path. How the shadow forms in childhood. Imagine that a child's psyche is soft plasticine. Every strong experience leaves an imprint on it. Case 1. Little Sasha happily runs to his mother. Look, I drew a dragon. And his mother, without looking up from her phone, throws out, don't bother me, I'm busy. The conclusion of the psyche. No one is interested in my achievements. Case 2. A girl named Lena spills juice. Her father yells, you're such a creep. You always ruin everything. Conclusion. I'm clumsy and I ruin everything. These scenario decisions become the building blocks of the shadow. And here we are 20 years later. Sasha, a talented designer, is afraid to show her work to clients. they won't appreciate it anyway. Lena, a successful businesswoman, panics and avoids situations where she needs to pour something in front of people. Why is it so hard to change this? Because the shadow is a master disguise. She hides childhood traumas under layers of rational explanations. I'm not a coward. I just logically assess the risks. In reality, it's the fear of my father, who shouted, "Don't interfere." I'm not lazy. I just have a low energy level. In reality, it's suppressed anger of my mother, who forced me to keep my head down. 3 levels of shadow work. Level 1, awareness, catching the shadow by the red hand. Every time you feel sharp resistance, oh, come on, experience irrational fear. I definitely won't succeed. Notice obsessive thoughts. What if I embarrass myself? Stop and ask, when did I first feel this? Whose voice was that from my past? Level 2, acceptance, returning the stolen parts. Exercise shadow portrait. 1, take a piece of paper. 2, write down 5 qualities that irritate you in other people. 3, now add each one. And sometimes I have this in me. Example, I hate it when people meddle in other people's business. And sometimes I also like to control. Braggers irritate me. And I also want to be noticed. Level 3, transformation, turning weaknesses into strengths. Client Irina's story. Her shadow said, "You are too emotional, it's shameful." During therapy, it turned out that at the age of 7, she was ridiculed for crying at school. Work. First, find the original source situation, that incident at school. Second, write a letter to the offender, do not send it. Third, create a new image. My sensitivity is a superpower. Thanks to it, I can accurately feel people. I see beauty in small things. I can be a warm mother. A month later, Irina started blogging about psychology, and her subscribers fell in love with her emotionality in particular. Shadow in relationships. Why we choose the wrong people. Your shadow loves to reproduce childhood scenarios. Example, if your parents were cold, you subconsciously choose emotionally unavailable partners. If you were laughed at, you fall in love with those who devalue you. How to break the cycle. First, write out the 3 most painful episodes from past relationships. Second, find a common thread. I was always abandoned. I dissolved in my partner. Third, ask, how does this repeat my childhood experience? When the shadow is useful, the seeker of the dark side reverse. The shadow is not only fears. It is also repressed sexuality, your natural charisma, forbidden aggression, the ability to say no, blocked joy, the ability to be spontaneous. Exercise shadow dance. Turn on rhythmic music. Close your eyes. Allow your body to move the way you want, even if it looks stupid. Notice, what movements do you usually forbid yourself? Who is the master in your head? The shadow will not disappear, but now you have instructions. First, catch it by the hand in the moment. Aha, it's you again. Second, ask, what are you trying to tell me? Third, transform her energy into creativity. As Jung said, the shadow is the door to your individuality, and the key to this door is in your hands. Tonight, try shadow dialogue. When you notice sabotage, ask out loud, what are you afraid of? And write down the first answer. Perhaps it will be the voice of your 7-year-old self. Tell it, I am an adult. We are safe now. This is the beginning of real freedom. Shadow and body, where your suppressed emotions live. Have you noticed how some people spend years treating their back, stomach, or headaches, but doctors just shrug their shoulders? Often it is a shadow that has turned an old emotion into a physical symptom. How it works. Unshed tears, throat problems. Suppressed anger, liver problems. Feeling of uselessness, heart pain. A real story. Anna, 32, came complaining of a lump in her throat. Her tests were normal. In therapy, it turned out that at 14, she wanted to tell her mother about her teacher's harassment, but she cut her off. Don't make things up. Since then, Anna literally swallowed words. When she finally screamed out that pain in the psychologist's office, the lump disappeared. Practice talk to the body. 1. Lie down, close your eyes. 2. Find a place where there is discomfort. 3. Ask, what do you want to tell me? 4. Write down the first word/image. Shadow and money. Why do you sabotage your income? Your financial situation is a direct reflection of your relationship with the shadow. Examples of programs. Money is dirt if your parents hated the rich. Don't show off if inflated grades in childhood cause envy among peers. I must suffer if money was associated with pain in the family. Case: Mikhail, a business owner, always miraculously lost large sums of money on the eve of a breakthrough. As a child, his father went broke and committed suicide. Subconsciously, Mikhail believed big money equals death. Exercise financial detective. 1. Remember 3 strange financial losses. 2. Find emotion before the event: fear, guilt. 3. Ask, what childhood belief is at play here? Collective shadow. Why does society hate successful people? Have you noticed how people laugh at those who change? This is the collective shadow at work. How it manifests itself. Who are you? When someone stands out from the pack, do you need it more than anyone else? Attack on those showing talent. The rich are thieves. Rationalization of your own fear. What to do. 1. Realize this is not about you, it is about their shadow. 2. Use a mirror technique. When I am angry at other people's successes, I ask, what is blocked in me? Shadow and creativity. Why you don't write a book? 95% of people dream of creating something significant, but I'm not a genius. Shadow is afraid of comparison. This has already happened. Fear of repeating childhood shame. What if they condemn me? Projection of their own critic. Story. Olga prepared to write a novel for 10 years. Studied styles, bought courses. On the first page, she was stopped by the thought, "You're not Tolstoy." As a child, her teacher ridiculed her essay in front of class. The dirty creativity method. 1. Create an intentionally bad version, terrible drawing, clumsy text. 2. Tell the shadow, look, I'm already doing it badly. Your fears have come true. 3. Gradually, the quality will improve. Shadow archetypes. Which one lives in you? Jung identified several masks of the shadow. First, jester. Afraid of seriousness. Sabotages important things. Oh, come on, I'll start tomorrow. Second, victim. Looks for someone to blame. It's all the economy/government/parents. Third, tyrant. Afraid of weakness. Controls everyone. You do everything wrong. Test. Remember the last conflict. What role did you play? Shadow and social networks. Why do you hang out in the feed? Meaningless scrolling is an escape from the shadow. It is afraid of silence, where repressed thoughts live. Loneliness. What if you are unnecessary? Your own desires. What if it doesn't work out? Experiment. First, set a timer for 5 minutes. Second, sit in silence without a phone. Third, write down the thoughts that come into your head first. Sexual shadow. Where do prohibitions come from? For some reason, sex is the most shaded area. Main fears. I'm too/not sexy enough. It's shameful if there was a taboo on the topic in the family. I'm like a parent of my gender. Fear of repeating their scenario. Exercise. Write a letter on behalf of your body, starting with the words, if I could talk, I would tell you. When the shadow wins. Signs of total control. Alarm bells. You say, where you should say my shadow. I hate sports instead of my shadow is afraid of looking stupid. People around you note your contradictions. Yesterday you said the opposite. Constant feeling of fatigue. Energy is spent on suppression. Result, agreement with the shadow. Imagine that your shadow is a stubborn employee. You can, first, continue to waste energy on the fight. Second, make her responsible for intuition. She senses danger. Protection. She quickly recognizes lies. Creativity. She contains all your forbidden passion. Final task. Tonight, before going to bed, say out loud, thank you, shadow, for trying to protect me. But now I'm an adult. Let's work together. Tomorrow morning, you will notice that some fears have lost their power. Because the most terrible thing for the shadow is not analysis, but your fearless attention. Jung believed, the shadow becomes dangerous precisely when it is not noticed. Now you are armed. What will you do with this knowledge tomorrow? How the shadow controls your habits. The invisible puppeteer of everyday life. Have you ever noticed how you pick up your phone first thing in the morning? You reach for sweets when you're nervous. You put off important things for later. It's not you. It's your shadow that is turned on the autopilot. Let's analyze the mechanism. A real-life example. Every evening, Marina forgot to put her gym uniform away for the morning. When we analyzed the situation, an episode surfaced. When she was 12, her physical education teacher made fun of her weight in front of the whole class. Now her shadow was protecting her from repeating that humiliation in any way possible. Practice analysis of the habit. 1. Choose one automatic reaction. 2. Follow the chain, trigger, action, short-term relief, long-term consequences. 3. Ask, what childhood pain does this habit treat? Shadow and procrastination. Hidden sabotage. Your "I'll just take a little rest" is often not laziness, but fear of success. What if I can't handle the consequences? Perfectionism. It's better not to do something than to do it imperfectly. Rebellion against control. They forced me as a child. Experiment. The next time you feel like putting something off. First, stop. Second, ask out loud, what is this delay protecting me from? Third, write down the first answer. This is the voice of the shadow. Shadow in language. How speech reveals your blocks. Listen to your favorite phrases. I won't succeed. Childhood experience of failure. I don't understand this. Fear of seeming stupid. I always. A program for repetition. Exercise translator. 1. Write down 3 frequently repeated negative phrases. 2. Translate them into the language of the shadow. I hate getting up early. As a child, I was woken up by screaming, I don't know how to save. My parents constantly talk about not having enough money. Shadow and food. What are you actually eating away? Eating habits are a direct channel to the subconscious. Craving for sweets, lack of joy. Overreading, need for protection. Undereating, fear of showing up. Client story. Alexei couldn't pass by the bakery. In therapy, he remembered the only warm moments with his busy mother were when she baked pies on Sundays. His shadow was looking for that forgotten closeness through buns. Technique, hunger, and shadow. Before eating something, ask, 1. Am I really hungry? On a scale of 1 to 10. 2. What do I really want now? Peace? Love? Rest? 3. How else can I get it? Shadow and dreams. Night messages from the subconscious. Recurring dreams of the shadow knocking on your door. Being late. Fear of missing out. Chasing. Avoiding some truth. Losing teeth. Worry about external evaluation. Practice decoding. 1. Write down a vivid dream. 2. Highlight the main symbols. 3. Ask each character/object, what do you represent in my life? 4. Relate to the current situation. Shadow and age. Why do you get stuck in a certain period? Some people, at 40, they act like teenagers. At 25, they feel like old men. It is the shadow that froze development at a traumatic moment. Example, 38-year-old Dennis was irritated like a schoolboy when he was interrupted. At 8, he was publicly humiliated by a teacher for chattering. His shadow was stuck at that age, defending the right to a voice. Exercise age line. 1. Draw a line of your life. 2. Mark the traumatic events. 3. Write down what decision your psyche made then. 4. How does this decision affect you now? Shadow and parenting. What are you passing on to your children? We unconsciously reproduce. Phrases of our parents. If you don't study well, you'll become a janitor. Behavior patterns. Screaming when we lose control. Eating habits. Eating to relieve stress. How to break the chain. 1. Notice automatic reactions. 2. Stop for 3 breaths. 3. Ask, is it me or my shadow speaking? 4. Choose a new answer. Shadow and digital addiction. Why do we run to the virtual world? Social networks provide instant approval, which was lacking, the ability to create an ideal image, compensation for childhood imperfections, escape from loneliness, which scares the shadow. Experiment digital detox. 1. Note the moments when you want to take your phone. 2. Record the emotion before this boredom, anxiety. 3. Try to just sit with this emotion for 2 minutes. 4. Write down what you discovered. Shadow and diseases. Psychosomatic dictionary. The body screams when the shadow is not heard. Neck pain. I'm carrying an unbearable burden. Skin problems. I don't feel safe. Allergies. Some situation irritates me. Method: dialogue with a symptom. 1. Localize pain/discomfort. 2. Imagine that this part wants to talk. 3. Ask, what you tried tell me. 4. Write down the first associations. Shadow and spiritual growth. Developmental traps. Even on the path of awakening, the shadow throws up. The race for enlightenment. I have to meditate for 2 hours. Condemnation of the unenlightened. Pride in the mask of wisdom. Spiritual materialism. My third chakra is cleaner than yours. How to recognize. Ask, am I doing this out of love or fear? Out of joy or to prove it? Shadow and death. The greatest fear. Attitude to death reveals. Fear of not having time, not living the present. Terror of non-existence. You don't give yourself peace while you're alive. Anxiety about inheritance. You don't feel your value now. Exercise final. Write 3 versions of your epitaph. 1. What you're afraid they'll write. 2. What you'd like. 3. What you need to change today to make the second version true. The art of integration. How to befriend your shadow. First, observation without judgment. I wonder if my shadow wants to control everything again. Second, gratitude. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm an adult now. Third, creative expression. Draw/dance/write your shadow sides. Fourth, humor. Come up with a name for your shadow and laugh at its tricks. Final, your shadow is not an enemy. It is the guardian of all the parts you once rejected. The more light you shed on it, the less it controls you from shadows. Start today. Notice one moment a day when it is clearly not me but my shadow. This is enough to start a consciousness revolution.